Welcome to It's All About Connection, NVC with Dr. B.
In today's episode, we're talking about a listener question that we got.
Yes. It was a couple of weeks ago, actually, but we haven't been in the recording studio in a few weeks. So a couple of weeks ago, we had a listener call in and basically say something along the lines of she had a situation where she was emotionally triggered and found it difficult to give empathy to that person. And I think she said she was feeling very sad because she wasn't able to meet needs around consideration and kindness, maybe in the way that she wanted, because she wasn't able to give empathy. She also was wondering about, like, I guess maybe where she was stuck was that she was having thoughts that if you give someone empathy, you're basically agreeing, or validating what it is that they are saying. And maybe that's why she was stuck and not being able to give empathy. Maybe between that and being emotionally charged, the two things can really get in the way of giving someone empathy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess how would you say you can give empathy without seemingly agreeing?
Well, giving empathy is not agreeing at all. It's just making sure that you're hearing. Hearing and agreeing are two very different things. You can reflect what somebody's saying and you can take needs guesses, and you don't have to agree with anything that they're saying, but they hopefully will know that you're hearing them. And that might not be fully satisfying for the person receiving, because maybe they want you to agree. Maybe they want you, to get a sense of some sadness or emotionality around what it is that they just shared with you. So it might not. I guess let me back up for a second, because I think what happens often is if you're in a place where there's not like an energy exchange, like compassion exchange, something's probably amiss, and it's probably because you, as the empathizer, are too triggered to actually give empathy yourself.
And
That
then you would
happens.
say, go into wait.
Go into wait if possible, but, in many circumstances, you can't just immediately go into wait. That's a reality. I'm sure you've had that happen many a time where you're triggered, you're in a conversation with someone, they're right in front of you. It's hard sometimes to just leave out in that moment. The best you can do maybe is to give yourself some quick self-empathy in the moment, take a breath, get connected to your needs. If you can remember to do that, even I forget to do that quite a bit when I'm in a triggered moment. Or see if you can excuse yourself, like, I'm noticing that I'm triggered. I really want to give you empathy. I really want you to receive compassion and curiosity and openness from me in this moment. And I'm not able to do it. I'm just not able to do it. And so that's just a signal to me that I probably need to go and do some more work on myself and excuse yourself. If you can remember to do those things, then that gets you out of that difficult scenario where you're kind of stuck really trying to hear someone, but you don't have the emotional capacity to do it in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've done some previous episodes. I think the most recent one around this was reflection is not agreeing.
Yep. I don't remember when we did that, but that is true. I mean, reflection is not agreeing. And sometimes that's enough to just not get you deeper into a conflict by just reflecting, rather than doing any of those other conversational responses. If you could just, even if you're not fully appreciating what the other person's sharing, or you have some emotional response to it, sometimes at least just staying with the reflecting can keep it from getting more complicated and difficult. Maybe that's just the best you can do in a moment. And to have some grace with yourself. When I heard this caller say that she felt sad because she was having mornings around needs for empathy and kindness and compassion, it is painful when you can't move yourself to that place for another person sometimes because of those needs that you want to have coming from you to the other person. That can be very painful. Um, but also to note that if you're not able to do that, there are probably some needs that you are meeting in a moment like that. Are you tracking that at all? Like what that would be?
What it would be if you weren't able to really like fully give empathy.
Yeah, you're just kind of going through the motions of it as opposed to truly embodying it. I think there's a difference between those two things. Going through
Yeah.
the motions of it versus embodying true empathy.
Well,
And
I think embodying true empathy is presence.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's like if you're going through the motions, yeah, you can take feelings and needs guesses. And we've talked about this too, where it's like NVC robot.
right. And sometimes I just want people to know that sometimes that's all you can muster in a moment. That's reality. I mean, that's very much sometimes my reality, right? Especially with relationships that are have history and can maybe be hard. Sometimes it's really hard in those moments to just fully embody empathy. That's where a lot of your own work has to come into play. And maybe you just can't do it right in that moment. You can't do it right in that moment. So to extend some grace to yourself, if all you've got is the robotics, and that might not be received perfectly by the other person, is my thinking, but I also think that it minimizes some damage because if we respond in the way that we would typically respond, which is, maybe with anger or using some of those other conversational responses, it's a check. Like, is this going to be most connecting in this moment or not? That's always what you're wanting to be asking yourself. Is this going to move us more towards connection or is this going to move us away from connection? That's kind of like
Mhm.
that's the barometer you're using in every moment. And for this woman that called in, it sounds to me like she was too emotionally charged and it was really hard for her to stay in full embodiment of empathy. And so she had mornings. But my guess is like she was probably celebrating maybe some needs towards connection, maybe not to the level that she wanted, but or maybe even celebrating some needs for kindness and compassion from keeping herself from doing some of those other conversational responses, right? It could be a mixture of all of that. Just I guess again, I'll say just to have some grace for yourself as you're trying the process because it can be messy. It's not always like, connect A to B and that will bring you to C. Like it just doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. And that's when the do over comes in handy.
And that's when weight comes in handy. It's all part of the process. You're trying your best to get back to that place where you can really extend empathy, embody it. And even that doesn't mean agreeing. Even that, what that I think means is that there's like a lot of compassion and that compassion comes through. And sometimes if you're too triggered, that's a very hard thing to have happen in that moment. So that's where you go to wait so you can work on that so you could step back in, hopefully, and come back to empathy, reflecting, taking needs guests with compassion doesn't necessarily mean with agreement. So, yeah, in answer to this person, I think maybe she was also wondering and worrying that the other person was gonna take it like you agree, and she was wanting maybe some authenticity, like that she wasn't agreeing with them. And I think maybe that's where you get to use the full dance floor, like you give empathy to the person. And then hopefully there's a moment where you can say, hey, are you open to hearing what's going on for me around this? And then you step onto that part of the NVC dance floor and you express using your observations and your feelings and your needs. And that hopefully can give some clarity that you don't necessarily agree, and that you have some other observations and some feelings and some needs that have come up with you around that. But that NVC is not just about the empathy, it's also about the expression. I want to constantly remind people about that.
Yeah. Is there anything else we want to say about this?
I don't think so. I think that's all we've got. And hopefully you remember the empathy warm line, because I don't have it to put up on the screen. And I'm in a new environment, in case people can't tell. I'm in my one-room shack for the summer. This is where we are coming live. But I didn't bring, usually I have a little piece of paper that has the empathy warm line number on it. So now you're being tested, Heather. Take it away. What is it?
I think the empathy warm line number is 850-706-0488.
I kind of remember that as you were saying it. I think you're right. All right.
You know I'm right.
All right. You know you're right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And now here's the exit video.
You've been listening to It's All About Connection, NVC with Dr. B. For more episodes and guest bios, please visit us at www.thebigbymethod.com. That's www.thebigbymethod.com. And remember, empathy first,